The theme system, current traditionalism, writing assignments, and the development of first-year composition. In 1885, Harvard began its requirement for students to take a rhetoric class at the freshman level, focused on written composition. Harvard's implementation of a first-year composition course requirement was quickly mimicked by other universities, and so by the 1890s this requirement became the norm at most major colleges and universities. John Brereton observes that it is to Harvard that we must look for the rationale behind the rise of composition. While composition histories have recognized Harvard's role in the establishment of first-year composition, what is less recognized is Harvard's role in the development of the writing assignments in first-year composition that characterized current traditional rhetoric and pedagogy. Harvard's approach focused largely on theme writing, with daily themes and longer fortnightly themes. To offer a short definition, a theme at the end of the 19th century was the most common name for what students today would call a paper or an essay, although many papers students write today would not qualify as a theme. A theme was generally short, perhaps ranging from 100 to 1,000 words, clearly organized and unified, and focused on one particular topic. Today, the clearest example of an assignment that would still qualify as theme writing would be the 5-paragraph essay, which is also called the 5-paragraph theme. Composition histories have given considerable attention to the focus on correctness at the end of the 19th century and early 20th century, but comparatively less attention to the actual assignments, except for the 4 modes of discourse. Writing assignments in composition programs at the time, made up primarily of themes, formed a system of writing instruction as first-year composition and Harvard's approach spread. We might accurately call this system of writing instruction a theme system, for not only was it the dominant and widespread approach at the beginning of the 20th century, but teachers and scholars of the time recognized composition instruction of the time as being part of a theme system. It is the establishment of this theme system and its characteristics that this presentation examines. By viewing this period of writing instruction in terms of a system of assignments, rather than just a focus on correctness, the field of rhetoric and composition can better understand a central part of its history. Around 1885, when first-year composition courses began, Harvard's Barrett Wendell implemented what he called the daily theme in his upper-level composition course, English 12. Unlike the theme writing that was already a part of composition pedagogy, these daily themes were shorter, perhaps 100 words or less, in which students detailed some idea or observation. It was essentially Wendell's way of making students practice writing daily, with 6 such themes every week. While the daily theme might not have been adopted in freshman composition the same year, it was certainly not long before it was. In addition to these daily themes, longer fortnightly themes were assigned, which, unlike the daily themes, fit more closely in the tradition of theme writing that had been practiced in composition instruction in some form since at least the 16th century. These fortnightly themes were primarily the 4 modes of discourse. Just as other colleges and universities imitated Harvard's requirement for first-year composition, they also imitated Harvard's theme writing approach, including not only formal themes, but also the daily theme. Robert C. Kelly observes in 1914 that when the daily theme was introduced, it was then a novelty, but has since spread all over the country and is still in force in many colleges and secondary schools. As schools adopted the daily theme as part of the theme writing course, some explicitly gave credit to Harvard as the originator of this approach. J.F.A. Pyer, for instance, notes that in 1898, at the University of Wisconsin, the work in English composition was reorganized and the Harvard theme system was introduced. Harvard's theme approach was incredibly influential, and a 1902 book review in the Journal of Education of Copeland and Rideout's Freshman English and Theme Correcting in Harvard College lauds Harvard's method and influence on the teaching of composition. Harvard teaching of English is little short of sensational in its results. The instructors in English at Harvard College have developed a unique system of instruction and training in composition, with results so successful that the Harvard course in daily themes has become widely known and is copied, so far as possible, by teachers in high schools and colleges all over the country. Certainly, many educators at the time would disagree that Harvard's approach was sensational in its results, but what is clear is that Harvard had a great influence on the approach to composition instruction, with many teachers seeing it as successful and effective. Certainly, the daily theme was not the only characteristic of the theme approach, nor the most significant part of it. The textbooks adopted for these theme courses clearly give most of their focus to longer themes, such as the four modes of discourse. With so many daily themes being required, however, with up to 6 every week, the daily theme received significant attention. It was, perhaps most importantly, something new, credited as Harvard's invention, and so while there were other central parts of the Harvard theme course, the daily theme was seen as one of the defining characteristics of Harvard's approach into the first decade of the 20th century. The main reason some educators saw for the quick spread of Harvard's theme approach was that it was perceived to be an effective method of teaching composition. What others would see as grueling drill and an over-focus on form and correctness, others saw as a systematic approach that was the answer to the ever-present problem of students who could not write with correct English. The problem of students' inability to write correctly, of course, was one of the main reasons Harvard moved its required rhetoric to freshman level, making its main focus the composition of themes. Some in higher education, of course, blamed high schools and secondary schools for students' poor writing. It should not be surprising, then, that beyond higher education, the daily theme and the theme approach to teaching composition gained traction in some elementary schools and high schools. In his contribution to the 1903 Report on Courses of Study in English for Public Schools, Curly Horn, in discussing the upper grammar and high school grades, enthusiastically endorses the daily theme approach. Daily theme work, properly handled, produces better results than any other method I have tried or have seen others try. I confidently believe that the day is not far distant when all the better schools in New England will give courses in daily themes. Others, in endorsing the use of theme writing in early education, note the spread of the theme system. Caroline N. Poole observes in the Journal of Education in 1906 that a successful system of theme writing has been introduced into high schools and colleges. Elizabeth Kemper Adams writing in 1904, points out that with the adoption of the theme approach in teaching elementary school composition, a theme once a week became the ideal, and in most cases the attainment of the schools, while some ambitious institutions, fired by the example of the Harvard daily theme, provided for even more numerous written exercises. Reflecting on the adoption of the theme approach, Adams views the previous approach as inferior. The old system, or lack of a system, of long, formal compositions written at infrequent and irregular intervals of subjects calling for vague moralizing or crude digests of books of reference, of arbitrary and trivial criticism, if any, had given away all along the line to more rational and orderly methods of instruction. The newer theme system not only included more frequent themes, but the abandonment of the simple themes on more abstract topics that had been used for much of the 19th century. The more rational and orderly methods of instruction of the newer theme system, as Adams puts it, seem to focus more on correctness and style than anything else. While it would be inaccurate to claim that Harvard's theme approach to teaching composition was focused solely on correct writing, as any close examination of Harvard's course can demonstrate, this certainly was an important emphasis of the approach, with considerable attention given to correcting themes. Similarly, Kitzhaber's, Berlin's, and Crowley's representation of the period's writing instruction as dominated by an attention to correctness, current traditional rhetoric, is also an oversimplification. Nevertheless, a focus on form and correctness was one important characteristic of the theme system. Despite a widespread implementation and acceptance of the theme approach to teaching composition, it was not without its critics among teachers who recognized some of the shortcomings of this approach and made pedagogical changes in response. As early as 1895, for instance, Professor Melville B. Anderson describes how after trying the theme approach, Stanford University abandoned it, citing it as remedial and the job of secondary and preparatory schools. Others, such as an 1896 article in the Century magazine, critiqued the theme approach to composition classes, arguing instead in favor of a literature-based approach. In a 1918 address, with a similar view to that of the Century article, Nicholas Murray Butler of Columbia University asserts, "The inventor of the daily theme did an almost incalculable amount of damage when he started a movement that rapidly spread all over the United States. The one best way in which to teach students to write good English is to teach them to read good English." Further, with composition instruction's attention to correctness, Butler continues, "The daily writing is obnoxious to students, and the inspection and correction of their work is drudgery for the teacher, uncompensated by any adequate result." Many other educators were critical of Harvard's daily theme approach. A.R. Brubaker, president of the New York State College for Teachers, describes the viewpoint of many critics of the dominant approach to teaching composition. "The daily theme is confidently recorded as one of the inventions of Satan." While both Butler and Brubaker are somewhat harsh in their condemnation of the daily theme, somewhat similar to some modern critics of current traditionalism, others more politely expressed skepticism. Lane Cooper reflects 1910, after the daily theme had swept the nation, to one who from the beginning could have watched the daily theme advance from its home in New England to a gradual conquest of the South and West, the sight must have been attended with some misgivings. Some teachers in early and high school education also expressed dissatisfaction with the theme approach by the beginning of the 20th century. Attacking the theme writing system as ineffective, Mary Dowd says in 1909, "The daily theme, that deadly drainer of the wells of thought, should be abolished. Likewise the weekly theme, as a hard and fast requirement." Additionally, despite Elizabeth Kemper Adams's praise for the theme approach, she recognizes shortcomings. But so far, the returns have not come up with the sanguine expectations, and composition teachers of today are somewhat chastened in spirit, and in many cases actually discouraged and baffled. Further, despite the theme approach's improvements, such as neater and more correct grammar and punctuation, these negative virtues seem a slight reward for the sacrifices of time and strength, the gallons of red ink poured out by painstaking teachers upon the papers of industrious and docile pupils. Indeed, the problem of time and labor was one of teachers' greatest complaints with the theme system. This being the case, the most notable pedagogical changes made in response to the theme approach were primarily to ease the burdens on teachers, such as the use of oral themes, although such changes were not radical enough to displace the theme system. In addition to the problems with teachers being overworked with the quantity of themes, although the problem of overworked composition teachers is still pertinent today, many schools began to abandon shorter and daily themes in favor of longer, less frequent themes. Writing in 1928, Bernard DeVoto explains these changes. The theme system varies with the college. The parent course began by requiring a short daily theme, the one-page theme, that has become notorious on the theory that daily practice was the best means of acquiring skill. The daily theme is preserved in many colleges, but perhaps a greater number, fearing that the system developed an ability to write a paragraph but left the student helpless beyond that unit, have abandoned it. Instead, they require a longer theme every week, and usually an ambitious effort of 4,000 or 5,000 words to be written at the end of the course. Here, the weekly theme is the basis of instruction. With the requirement of longer themes and the abandonment of daily themes, colleges remained committed to the theme approach to composition instruction, and so the theme system, like any system of genres, evolved, but it remained. With such changes in the system beginning by the 1920s, J.R. Rutland writes in 1923 that following Harvard's approach, freshman composition has been a much battered target for pedagogical sharpshooters outside and inside the profession of teaching. But, he adds, remaining faithful to the theme approach, this method of teaching composition through much writing and self-criticism is still fundamental in our method. The principles behind the theme system would not be so easily abandoned. Despite quitting college composition teaching, DeVoto similarly expresses his own commitment to the theme system. The theory of instruction in English A, he writes, is reasonably sound. It is a drearily mechanical system, but I do not see how it could be improved. Many educators, such as Devoto, retained the belief that the drearily mechanical system was the most effective way of teaching composition, in which grammar, form, and correctness were most important. Just as this current traditional mindset remained dominant in writing instruction, so did theme writing. While assignments would develop and change, and teachers would continue to express dissatisfaction with assigning and grading themes, the theme system would be retained for over half of the 20th century, along with the current traditional focus on correctness. Theme writing and the development of a theme system in college composition courses largely encompassed what we call current traditionalism in the early decades of first-year composition. By recognizing the important role of theme writing and the establishment of a theme system by the early 20th century, scholars in rhetoric and composition can begin to better understand the current traditional period in which first-year composition developed and the approach to writing instruction that characterized that period. Beyond this, however, we can also begin to re-examine the ways composition continues to be taught and current practices that have survived and developed from the theme system.